TPCSI fans, you want to revolutionize your sports investing habits? Allow me to tell you about WagerWire. WagerWire is an app that helps you become a superior bettor by allowing you to sync all your sports books and track all your bets in one place. See your current action, your betting history, and stats. You could also sign up for sports books and collect bonus offers. Follow them at WagerWire on X, as it's the best account on the platform. Head to App Store or Play Store now and search WagerWire and download the app.
Jared, hey, we're gonna need you to tone it down with the Summer Friday thing, okay?
What are you talking about?
Well, for one, it's not summer anymore.
Oh, really?
Coconut. Also, who is this?
I'm the caddy.
Oh, he's my intern.
Sorry, intern. I'm his intern.
Yeah, he's doing a great job.
No golfing in the office, okay? Summer Fridays are over. You can keep the Hawaiian shirt, but the rest of this stuff, all right? Are you grilling?
Oh, yeah. Did you want a burger or a hot dog?
No, grilling in the office.
That's a good point. We should take this outside.
No, that don't. You put that right back down.
Yo, it's all in the hips.
Oh, dude, come on, we gotta go. Let's go.
Good afternoon, sports fans from all around the globe. I am the host, Jeff Dawson, East Coast Sports Investors, and it's that time of the day for the closing bell with none other than good friend and colleague, Mr. Ron Marmolewski at Ron A Sports. Go follow him on X. So much to talk about. I promise I'll do my best not to keep him overtime. You know, we were talking backstage. I got our ECSI VIP alert all ready to send, and I'm talking to Ron about the Penn State Ohio State game, and I had something circled here, and then before my eyes it changes, and it's like now they're honing in on my work and my slips here. It's kind of comical. But first and foremost, before we get into that, a shout out to our proud sponsor and partnerships. It's WagerWire. Head on over to Google Play, download the app. It is free. Travis and Zach, who both live in LA, thoughts, prayers continue to LA. Not just LA now, the state of California and the wildfires. Everyone, please be safe. God, not a pretty scene out there. Viva Tequila Seltzer, CT Bets Austin, the team second to none. The East Coast is cuckoo for coconut. And of course, Atlanta Steaks and Seafood. Shout out to Terry Smith. Glad your surgery went well. Head on over to Facebook. Introduce yourself to Terry Smith. While you're there, place an order at atlantasteaksandseafood.com. Use the promo code STEAKS10. Get 10% off your full order there. Also, take a look at their website. 4 subscription plans. Check one of the boxes, and that's all you got to do. Every month, Terry will send you a box to your house. You never have to leave the house and never leave the kitchen or the grill. So without further ado, let's turn it over to good friend, Mr. Ron Marmolewski. Afternoon, Ron.
Good afternoon, Jeff. Good to be with you. I know we're going to be talking football, some very important games, but yeah, it's cold on the East Coast and unfortunately fires out on the West Coast. So hope everybody's safe, and we'll give everybody a little diversion for about 45 minutes.
We're going to start with college football, the Final Four. I talk about the NFL, and here's the little story that I do, Ron. If you place a 20-pound carcass at your local landfill Monday morning at 8 a.m., then you go back to the landfill, let's say 12:30 on Sunday, because that's when everyone's placing their Sunday afternoon wages. That carcass, that 20-pound bird is now nothing but carcass. It has been picked just like these lines. These lines have been up for so long. Anyone running to the window right now, the numbers have been picked through. Superbook right now, a pick and a 45, Notre Dame and Penn State. At DraftKings, Notre Dame is now 1.5 with a 45.5. As I was talking to you, so proud to take my Penn State team total over 21.5, Heritage said, not so fast, Jeff. Now they moved it to 23.5, juiced under minus 135. This is an under-over. It started at 50, Ron. It started at 50, now down to 45. I'm going to just give you that 7.5-yard button hook and let you take it away on this game. I mean, it is a true coin flip.
Yeah, I mean, the bigger the game, the more the books know everything there is to know. They know some of the tendencies. The public comes out and plays. They play their favorite sides and so on. So there's a lot of stuff going on. It feels like a Super Bowl type atmosphere in the college football Final Four. And of course, you have heavyweights in this game. You have 4 teams that are used to be playing in the spotlight, even though Penn State really hasn't been here because they've needed the expanded 12-team playoff to get here. Maybe Notre Dame has been here, but it hasn't been for a while. But they've been on the big stage before, so everybody knows everything. Boy, that line of 50.5 was a little high to start. It was not a total that I actually got involved in because I'm a little bit late sometimes to the totals atmosphere, but there was a little bit of value in going under in the first half because sometimes halves and quarters, they don't get adjusted as fast as games get adjusted. And the way I see this playing out, even if it's a coin flip game, is that I think the teams are going to have to feel each other out a little bit. It is still a big stage for these kids. They haven't been in the Final Four. And I think we're going to see some sparring early on. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But I have a feeling the game starts out a little bit slower than people think.
I talked to Paul Stone this morning on the Breakfast Bankroll at 11 a.m. I was talking Penn State, 2 guys that stock just keeps flying up the board, the quarterback Allard, and of course their tight end. I'm not comparing him to Brock Bowers now, but this tight end for Penn State has had a hell of a run.
Yeah, he's been my number 1 tight end for draft purposes for a while. Now, I don't really get into the draft until the combine starts. I don't feel the need to do it during the regular season because I'm enjoying the regular season. I don't really want to be cluttered with the draft. But by osmosis, you're looking at these players and you're learning what's going on as you're watching and reviewing box scores. And Warren's the first of about 4 really, really strong tight ends, and he's going to be a first rounder for sure. Drew Aller, I need more information about, and I think this is a great test to find stuff out because during the regular season, Penn State allowed fewer than 50% of passes to be completed. And Aller, he hasn't set the world on fire in these 2 playoff games, hasn't had to, and he hasn't thrown any interceptions and so on, but in simulating the results of this particular game, this is going to be a tough test for him, and I'm curious to see how he comes out of it. I don't have a draft rating for him yet. I need more information.
Notre Dame, we've talked about it since, I don't know, the 2nd or 3rd week in September. They go to Texas A&M, hard-fought battle, great win. They read their press clippings. They come back home for their home opener against Northern Illinois. 28.5-point favorites and lose outright. The shocker of all shockers. Been playing for their lives ever since. They played 2 undefeated naval academies, Army and Navy. They end the year at USC. They then host Indiana. And then why not bring on a Georgia team? The SEC, 1.5-point favorites at the opener. A game hard-fought first half, a late turnover by Georgia, short field, Notre Dame scores, then gets the opening kickoff and runs it back for a touchdown. Game kind of over right there against a backup quarterback. Give me your thoughts on Notre Dame coming into this game.
Notre Dame has to feel good about the way they handled most of everything in terms of the Georgia game. First and foremost, their kicker made some clutch kicks, and he had been down. He had been under 50%, I think, during the regular season. Place kicker confidence is so important. You think it's important for the NFL. What about kids that are 18, 19, 20 years old and stuff like that? That was probably, to me, the biggest takeaway is that they got some confidence out of a guy who had a very good year in 2023 for South Carolina. Didn't replicate that, but now he feels better. Second thing is they won without a tremendous contribution without their running back who was banged up in the previous game, the Indiana game, and they were still able to find a way. Third thing is that Riley Leonard ran the ball effectively, and we saw that at Duke. We saw that at Notre Dame. The question is, can he run at a fundamentally sound Tom Allen coached and James Franklin coached defense? That'll be interesting. It's a chess match, but Ryan Leonard brings that versatility to the table. The one thing that bothered me a little bit is that they did allow a lot of yards to Gunnar Stockton and the Georgia quarterback. They did allow a high completion percentage, and we didn't know what Georgia quarterback brought to the table without Carson Beck there. And I was thinking that he would have a tough time of it. Georgia's tough to beat. I mean, they've been there, they've done that. You have to kick them until they're finally down. And then you have to kick them one more time to make sure you win the game. Notre Dame did that, but they still allowed a lot of yards. I don't think Drew Aller is capable of doing that, but I'm not sure now because they have Wallace and they have Warren, and they have two of the most experienced running backs that you could ever have in third-year starter Singleton and Allen. So we're going to find out a little bit more about Notre Dame's defense. That's the one area that I was a little bit surprised on, but everything else, Notre Dame checked the boxes.
As we did last week, I threw this out to you. The focal points for Notre Dame to win and the focal points, obviously, for Penn State to win.
Okay, read off my notes again because I did the write-off. For Notre Dame, can running back Love break off another signature big play? Because he's capable of doing that. He's had a week extra now. Can wide receiver Bo Collins get his form back? He was their leading receiver, and he hasn't been at all the last couple of weeks. He's caught one or two passes. I personally do think he gets a little bit more than his 17 and a half posted yards. We'll see how that goes. I think Collins needs to get his form back in this game. How about Riley Leonard? Can he see those run holes that he saw the last couple of weeks? Can he do that again, like we mentioned in this particular game? And the run defense, which had let them down a little bit during the regular season, really stiffened against last week against Georgia. Can they do it again in a very tough test? Those are my Notre Dame keys. Now, for the keys for Penn State, they have to contain Riley Leonard. Can they box him in? Can they not have him do some of that outside running? Can they show off tight end Warren to the entire universe? Everybody knows he's good in draft circles. Everybody knows he's going to be targeted. Can he do that even though Notre Dame knows what's coming? They're going to try to defend Warren. What does he do? Does he catch 5 passes for 40 yards and it doesn't matter? Or does he do one of his signature games? That's very important there. Will their kicking continue to improve? And finally, the kick and punt return units. Singleton's a very good kick and punt returner. Does that give them a little bit edge too? So there's a little bit going on there. And if I could add one more thing, this is the moment we find out a little bit more about James Franklin. He has not won against Ohio State for a variety of reasons. He's had lukewarm success when there's been something on the line. He got sort of a pass playing at home the first week, didn't feel like a playoff game. And then last week playing against what I think was an overmatched Boise defense. This is going to be either his signature moment or at the end of the game, we're going to say, oh, James Franklin, you let us down again.
Well, I know I didn't, and I don't know how many people actually did that had either Notre Dame or Penn State in the championship game. on their bingo card. I didn't.
No, I had them both in the final 12. I mean, I had a ticket on I had two tickets. Probably mentioned that way early. I had one on Mississippi, but the schedule pitfalls did them in, and they just lost that game at Florida. Otherwise, they're in. And I had one on Penn State because I've talked about it. Penn State in any 12-team playoff would have been in it. What, 7 of the last 9 years, 6 of the last 7. So this was tailor-made for a Penn State to get into the 12, but to get into the 4, that was a bit of a long shot.
We go to Friday night's game, Ohio State and Texas. Ohio State, it opened up there saying 6.5. We know the true number was 4.5. I'll say it got steamed to 6.5. I'm going to use the circa number now, 6 with a 53. I can go out and say this. If Ohio State plays like they have in the first 2 games against Tennessee, and then obviously last week against Oregon, tall task for Texas to beat them, and whoever wins tonight's game to go on and beat them on the 20th. They're kids. Big stage, Ryan Day here versus Sark here. Initial thoughts, I mean, it's a big number. It did dip to 5.5, now back at 6. Your initial thoughts on Texas and Ohio State?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up that the real number is 4, maybe 4.5, but everybody knows what Ohio State is capable of. They saw it in the first quarter against Oregon. So naturally, you're going to get a public bump up. And I think you're getting a professional bump up too, because they say, hey, this is the team that can win it all. So you pay a little bit of a premium for Ohio State, and maybe rightfully so, because if they play their A game, they're not going to lose this game. They learned so much. I think we talked about it last week. They learned so much from the Michigan game, how not to run a game plan, that they're comfortable in saying, okay, McCord, do what you want to do, we're going to trust you because you have so many good weapons. You have a game breaker at running back. You have a workhorse at running back. You have the most exciting freshman wide receiver in college. You have a couple of other veteran supporting wide receivers. You have a good defensive coordinator. You have a lot of things going for you. Let's run with it. And my thinking is something's happened to Texas the last 2 weeks. They're not as bad as they've looked. They certainly should have lost the game against Arizona State. The 4th and 13 blitz was ill-advised, and then we'd be talking about Arizona State, and we'd be talking about a double-digit spread and so on and so forth. But we're not, and Texas survived, but something's happened to Texas's pass defense, and something's happened to where they're allowing more points than they should be allowing. And Quinn Ewers has had some really good games, but he's also thrown some interceptions. And this game may hinge on how good Quinn Ewers plays. And even though this isn't a great Ohio State pass defense, it really let them down during the regular season. With every game that Ohio State is playing, they're getting a little bit more confident in the pass defense. So just like what I said about in the first game, a real good test for Drew Aller and his NFL draft stock, this is a great test for Quinn Ewers and his NFL draft stock. And it's going to be an interesting game to see what he's capable of doing, because I do think he's going to be throwing the ball more than his comfort zone says he's going to have to throw the ball.
Yeah, and their running game has been non-existent of late. Yeah. They are playing in the state of Texas. It's not an official home game, but they are playing in Texas. I'm going to go back to the Georgia game where they hosted and they got blitzed. Let's say Ohio State blitzes what they did to Oregon, they do to Texas. And again, this is just an out from left field. Does Sark have a short leash here and say, Archie, what do you got for me? If they're down 17, 20 points, or is this Ewers' game to win or lose?
If they're down by that much, maybe he does have a short leash. But just like my notes said, and I didn't send them to you, so you didn't read them, but I acted like you read them there, is that's the problem. Texas is allowing a few too many sacks right now. 33 is high for a Final Four team. And we know Ohio State has ramped up their rush because they put some pressure on Oregon and they put some pressure in the first game as well. So that's going to be one of the issues that Quinn Ewers is going to have to deal with. That's why I think you're going to see some short passes. You're going to see passes either to Wisner or Jaden Blue, hopefully especially Jaden Blue. But we're going to see some kind of short passing game to try to counteract that. Sark is very good in terms of his offensive strategic planning. Wherever he's been, whether head coach, coordinator, and so on, they put up points. They do those bubble screens. They do a lot of wide receiver stuff that he did at Alabama. He's going to get the ball out, presumably with a different kind of game plan in this particular environment. Will that lead to points? I mean, you can complete a short pass for 3 yards. It doesn't get you anywhere. He's going to have to vary that up a bit. But he's hoping that they don't have to go to Manning, because even though it's the Manning family, it's a big stage for a guy who really hasn't seen a lot of playing time the last couple of weeks.
Go back to that Arizona State-Texas game. If you went to the kitchen to, let's say, make yourself a little meal and get yourself beverage and get ready for the game, you came back, it was 14-3. And I said this, I think Sark was like, I didn't expect this, and almost pulled the reins back. They kept Scatterboo for the first half in check, and it was almost like Sark's looking at the clock here and saying, hey guys, we got a 14-3 lead here. Let's not make the mistake. They're not going to be able to go 80-yard drives against us. Well, in the second half, Arizona State and Scatterboo started to make some headway here, and obviously double overtime there. Can this defense of Texas slow down the running attack of Ohio State to make Howard have to beat them?
Yeah, that's going to be an interesting question, because during the regular season, they did. That run defense was pretty stout, but a back like Scatterboo, he is something special. And Ohio State brings variety. I love it when teams have a straight ahead running back and then a game home run hitter like Henderson. So they got Judkins, they have Henderson. That's going to put some strain on Texas's defense. And like we opened up and talked about, Chip Kelly is now more willing to put that whole offense in place. You don't want to run straight ahead all the time like he did against the Michigan defense. So there's going to be a strain on Texas. And if Ohio State brings their A game, then I'm not sure there's anything Texas can do other than try to hope that Quinn Ewers matches them, TD for TD, score to score.
Well, your keys for both sides, both teams.
Okay, for Ohio State, again, they need to continue to open up the offense. Not let McCord, everybody's starting to warm up to him, but the moment could be too big for him. We have to be careful, rein him in. When I simulated these games, there were turnovers, there were interceptions, and McCord threw a couple of them. So you have to be careful. Watch his early passes. Is he throwing high? The first thing that you notice in a quarterback is if they're throwing too high, it's a sign to me that they're a little bit nervous. I'm curious how that happens. And their pass defense has to limit some big plays for Ohio State. Texas has to have some rush success. They have to keep Ohio State honest, in my opinion. Whether it be a running back wheel route or whether it be some sort of misdirection, they just have to keep Ohio State's defense honest in that regard. And the offensive line is absolutely huge. Can they contain Ohio State's pass rush? That's very important. And the final point, because I'm about special teams, Texas let us down again in terms of the kicking game, missing some kicks in that Arizona State game. They can't let that happen again, because the opponent is much tougher now. If you miss a kick, it may cost you the game. It may cost you how you game plan. Now you're going for touchdowns in the red zone instead of field goals. That first kick that Texas's kicker, he's got to make that first kick.
We'll be talking next Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. in the West Coast. Ron, who will, in your eyes, and I'm not putting you to the test here, but in your eyes, who will be in the finals for next 2 Mondays from now championship?
I'm not trusting James Franklin just yet, so I think we're going to get an Ohio State Notre Dame. There's not that much difference between Notre Dame and Penn State. It's part karma, which I don't handicap, but it's part now you're playing a big boy team. And James Franklin said some stuff at his press conference that I didn't like either in terms of strength of schedule. And while I agree with a lot of what he said it publicly. I think Notre Dame comes to play, and my best guess will be Ohio State, Notre Dame in the final.
NFL wildcard weekend. Before we get into the games, I got your beautiful email here. And of course, it's fired coaches. It's fired GMs. It's who's the hot name. We know Ben Johnson. We know VRABEL. And I'll start in New England. The truth of the matter is, a couple Saturdays ago, the Patriots were playing the Chargers at a 1:00 game, and Mr. Kraft comes in on his helicopter and does 2 circles and does a double check of the empty parking lot, no tailgating, gets to his press box and looks, and there's no one here. Well, they lay an egg 40-7 against the Chargers. Then they play an exhibition game against the Bills, and of course win, which cost them the number 1 pick. Now they have the 4th pick. But what really happened is on Friday, Mike VRABEL was in New York to interview for the Jets opening job. So Kraft sitting there figuring this thing out, and he's like, oh, no. The Jets are not getting my son here, VRABEL. And he fires his prodigal son, Gerard Mayo, after 1 year, after a victory, 90 minutes after the game. He didn't wait till Monday. And so what they do this week, well, we know about the Rooney Rule, and we know what you have to do. And so Brian Flores is a hot name, but instead he brings in Byron Leftwich and Pop Hamilton, checks those 2 boxes. In comes VRABEL for an interview, and everyone in the world knows that's Kraft's number 1 pick. He's not going to go through the process probably quick enough. He's got his guy. He's got Ben Johnson coming in tomorrow, the way I understand it, and there's a list of others. Thoughts on the Patriots situation?
Well, you and I both know the most important thing they have to do is draft better. They've essentially butchered some drafts. And I know some of it is injuries because the offensive line didn't start off healthy, but they misfired at wide receiver. I kind of liked the 2 wide receivers they drafted this year, although I didn't think either one would be a number 1, but I thought both of them could be number 2s. They disappeared this year for whatever reason. It could be partially coaching. It could be a lot of different factors, but they haven't almost ever gotten the wide receiver draft correct at all. So VRABEL, I have a feeling Kraft wants to outbid everybody for VRABEL. That's the guy he wants. VRABEL's going to coach in the NFL next year. We know that. And it's probably going to be in New England because they're going to outbid everybody. The only thing I would say if he's not there is because he's uncomfortable with the drafting philosophy or the team building philosophy. But if he's on the same page in terms of how he wants to build the roster, then I think he's the guy in New England.
And he's made it clear he wants to bring his guys in. And what the Patriots have not done is let Elliott Wolf go. And I have heard that he's been pulled of most of all his decision makings. He's there to keep the lights on and shut the lights off. He will be a part of the draft, meaning he'll be there. He's done 9 months of work this year already, getting ready for this draft with the college season ahead of him. But let's go over to your neck of the woods. I said this to you last week, and I've been hearing rumblings. Tom's been pulling a full court press for VRABEL. We know the connection between VRABEL and Brady. And what the Raiders did today is fired their GM, saying, hey, Mike, we don't even have a GM here. Come on in. The kitchen is wide open. But the real fly in the ointment here is what came out yesterday. Tom reaching out to Bill Belichick and asking him, hey, you want to come back to the NFL? What are you hearing in Raiderville?
Not much, because Mark Davis, he beats to a different drummer We know that. So you're not going to get much information that way. They've struck out with GMs and they've struck out with coaches, and they've recycled coaches in the past. And I think the idea that Tom Brady is getting, Mark Davis is trusting Tom Brady, or it's seemingly based on the press clippings, is that Tom wants to bring a different perspective to the organization. And I like it. Tom is basically saying to Mark Davis, you've done it this way. It hasn't worked since John Gruden has been here. You had that magical 1 year and stuff like that. But you floundered since then. You need some winning. You need a winning attitude going in here. You need to bring in some fresh bodies. It doesn't have to be the Raider way anymore. You don't have to bring in ex-Raiders and so on. Let's look at this outside of the box. So I like that thinking. So I'm going to expand kind of what I said to you and what I sent to you a few days ago, because now we just had the firing. You want to go to organizations that have a symmetry between coach and GM, where they work really well together. And the best thing to do is find people who have been successful at other places. Every time, ever since Ozzie Newsome has been in Baltimore, that organization has thrived in the draft. When have you ever heard Baltimore not have a top 10 draft, even since Ozzie Newsome, who's still in the building, but he's not in charge anymore? And then Todd Monken comes over, and all of a sudden, the Ravens offense is incredibly diverse. And Lamar Jackson has 41 TDs and 4 interceptions, and they're scoring points at a premium. And then Travis Henry comes in. You've got all these parts. Package deal. You take Baltimore's assistant GM and you take Todd Monken and you place them either on the Jets or on the Raiders, some of these organizations that have floundered, and you start and you have a new culture. And that's personally what I hope Brady is talking to Mark Davis about.
And I heard rumblings that Tom could be one and done with Fox. He really wants to make his stamp on the Raiders. It'd be tough to, I don't know how you would turn down, what was it, like 375 million, and he's got 1 year under the belt, what he would do with that. Not that he needs the money. And when you talked about VRABEL and the PATS, that's just one step. The GM is another step. But if VRABEL comes in, I'm hearing, and I'm going to use the word retread because he's been here a million times, Josh McDaniel as your OC there. And Dan Quinn goes to Washington. Everyone poo-pooed that. What did he do? He got Kingsbury, okay? If you're a defensive coach, you need a big-time OC, and that's what happened to Mac Jones. His second year, they bring in Patricia. They bring in Judge. You lost him year 2. You can't do that to a Drake May. So when you talked about the Ravens organization and bringing in culture, that is got to be an integral part of these teams. And I guess where I'm going to go with this is, Ron, is the two big names we're talking about, Ben Johnson and Mike VRABEL. I think the diamond in the rough this year for head coaches is Brian Flores.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting. And I think he's going to get a long look at a couple of places, and we'll see if he could end up at a particular place. A lot of times, like New Orleans, for example, possibly a good job residing in the AFC South. There's a lot of average mediocrity in that particular division. The thing is, teams usually go from defensive coach to offensive coach and offensive coach to defensive coach. I think Flores would do well in New Orleans, but they just came off a defensive coach, and they probably need to upgrade the offense, and they're probably going to look more offensive minded. But that's a place they could look. Jacksonville has a need. Who knows what they're going to do? They're kind of in limbo land there. Or maybe Flores is happy in Minnesota. I don't know, but I know he definitely wants to be a head coach at some particular time. I don't think the Giants are the right job for him personally, because the Giants are a mess offensively at quarterback. That's not Flores' necessarily strong suit right now. He'll get some looks. Ben Johnson, yeah, he's a very hot commodity. He's going to search for the right situation. And it may be whether or not Detroit wins or doesn't win the Super Bowl is the right combination. If Detroit goes to the Super Bowl, and especially if they win it, I think Ben Johnson's going to take a job if one remains open. I think he will have accomplished what he needed to as an assistant coach, and then he wants to try his hand as a head coach. And so that's why you might see, Jeff, that some of these jobs do not fill that quickly because they think they're still alive in the Ben Johnson sweepstakes.
Well, if Ben's looking for a quarterback, a wide receiver, maybe a kind of sort of running attack, I don't know what our thoughts are now on Trevor Lawrence. I know they got a premium wide receiver with Brian Thomas. ETN has shown flashes. They got Bigsby. We know the organization itself is kind of sort of a mess. Would that be more appealing than, let's say, the Patriots with Drake May and a cloud of dust, or even the Bears in division with the Lions with a Caleb Williams and a lot of question marks?
I'm not going to say this one tactfully. I'm going to lay it out on the line. In a perfect universe, you are right. Jacksonville's a very good spot for Ben Jackson. If Trent Baalke is my GM and Jacksonville calls me, I don't take the call. Trent Baalke is a disaster as a GM, and I want no part of him.
Perfect world, Ron. Who is the new head coach for the Las Vegas Raiders?
Oh boy. I think it's a left field thing with him. So I don't know. Again, they went defense last, so you're going to have somebody, and I don't think it's Deion Sanders or any, but I mean, where the Raiders draft third, I think, if I remember.
Six.
Six. Oh, so they're further back. So there's no guarantee they're going to get one of the top two quarterbacks. But regardless, they're going to have to reach for a quarterback at some point because they don't. That's what you need in the NFL. You cannot win right now with O'Connell or Gardner Minshew. So the new coach is going to have to be somebody who can work extremely well. I mean, they'd love to have Ben Johnson. I don't see why Ben Johnson would go there. But in a perfect world, okay, give me Ben Johnson.
Okay. I know you did a lot of work here. Before we get into the NFL games for the weekend and your thoughts moving forward for the Super Bowl, with your work here that I'm looking at, do you want to hit on any of those spots that you see that you wrote about?
Very briefly, too. Dallas, whatever they do, they're going to do slowly. So don't count on them, not getting outwitted. I'm just tired of Jerry Jones just twirling his thumbs and then making a decision too late. And the Bears you're talking about a team that has some promise. They need somebody to work with Caleb Williams. Ben Johnson is the front runner for that position. They've got the wide receivers they need. They have an okay tight end. They just have to draft better at tight end. So the new head coach of the Bears has some talent to work with, but that's a culture thing. If they can flip things around and make it seem like Washington of last year, that would be great. The Bears, not a bad job, but the one caveat here is not the AFC South, and it's not the NFC South. It's the NFC North, and that division is brutal.
Great point there. NFL wildcard weekend Saturday, Chargers travel to Houston. Chargers right now 3 even at the Circa. There is a 2.5 at the South Point. Good afternoon to Chris Andrews and Jimmy Vaccaro there. Then Pittsburgh travels to Baltimore, a divisional battle, 9.5. It opened at 8.5. They cannot get any money on the Steelers there. Initial thoughts on Saturday?
So Saturday, Houston did exactly what I had hoped they would do. I mean, exactly what I hoped they would do. They gave Stroud confidence. They said, we're going to play him. This was my thought going in. We're going to play Stroud. We're going to get him a lead. And then he's going to leave the game with confidence because everybody in the building knew they had lost 2 or 3 games in a row. Nothing was going right. Their power rating had dipped and so on. They accomplished all of that. So they're back in a good frame of mind. Meanwhile, they have to play they have to play defense against Justin Herbert, who's just playing lights out ball. We know the Chargers moved from Staley to Harbaugh. They're tackling better. They're fundamentally more sound. I understand the Chargers as being a better team than Houston. I would make it 3 on neutral ground, but I think Houston's a little bit undervalued. I think it's closer to a toss-up game unless Herbert has one of those fantastic games. But let's not dismiss Nico Collins in this matchup too. He could do damage against the Chargers secondary. It's more of a flip a coin game to me. The Baltimore has earned the number 1, power rating for me. Pittsburgh is reeling. Their tough schedule is catching up to them. On Tuesday, I mentioned how I would approach the game if I were Pittsburgh, and that's you have to let Russell loose. You have to design runs for Russell. You can't let him be a sitting duck in the pocket because Russell Wilson's clock, his inner clock is not good enough. I mean, he'll get sacked. He'll get punished back there by a Baltimore defense that's relentless. These teams know each other all too well. But I mentioned I would do design runs for Pittsburgh. You have to get Pickens' confidence back up because he dropped a lot of passes the other day. Pittsburgh's biggest task is they have to actually tackle Travis Henry because the guy, what did he do? Ran for 164 against against them last time around. So you better tackle Henry or else you're in trouble. I think the line is correct. I think familiarity makes me not want to take Baltimore in this game. But the stat sheet says Baltimore is a really, really good team and can have their way with Pittsburgh.
Sunday, Denver travels to Buffalo. What a story Bo Nix has been and Sean Payton. I'm seeing 9s and 8.5s there with Buffalo. Green Bay travels to Philadelphia. That's a rematch of week 1 in Brazil. Currently Philadelphia 5 with the 46. And then the nightcap, Washington at Tampa. Tampa -3 with the 50 there. We're assuming in Green Bay, Philadelphia, that both Jalen Hurts and Jordan Love will both be playing there. Hurts hasn't played in a few weeks because of concussion. Love gets taken out with an elbow issue there. Any thoughts on the 3 games on Sunday?
Yeah, first of all, I know 2 of them are rematches, but I'm here to say don't even think about what happened in those 2 games because they were week 1, and then the Philly-Green Bay game, which was played in Rio de Janeiro, I believe, completely different set of circumstances. You have a new coordinator in Green Bay in his very first game. So you can't really judge that at all. You have new defensive backs at Philadelphia that now have played the whole season. And the Washington-Tampa, you certainly can't take anything away from that game. It was a whole new organization in Washington when they played week 1. So eliminate past matchups from the equation and just go by what we've seen so far. When we start with Buffalo-Denver, the main thing with Josh Allen is he has limited his mistakes. And I don't see how you really stop Buffalo. So in some respects, the very experienced Bo Nix is going to have to keep up with him. My curiosity in this game is Buffalo's defense so bad that Denver's just going to run on them just the same way that Buffalo's going to run on Denver? Are we undervaluing Denver in this game? That's my curiosity there. With Green Bay and Philly, yeah, there's uncertainty with quarterbacks, so it's hard to handicap this game. Watson's out for Green Bay. Some of the other wide receivers are sometimes up, sometimes down, and so on. I think Hurts will be fine. I think he'll be cleared. They're not going to clear anybody until they at least go through some protocols in practice. Hurts has started to do that now. So the big question is Jordan Love. Green Bay is a really good team and a really well-coached team. And they probably match up against Philly. But I think Philly is a rested team and has the better defense. And I have them prevailing in this game. And the Washington game has some mixed data. I don't know where to begin with Baker Mayfield because he's just amazing at times. He is turnover prone at some times. But what Tampa's doing, how they flip their run attack from near last to near first, how they managed to move the defense around. Long season for Jaden Daniels. We'll see how he does, but he's an electric player. I'm looking forward to the game, but I have a trouble handicapping that game.
I'm going to take it one step further. Both Kansas City and the Lions are rested. I think the Lions have done enough. Get the extra week off now. Don't forget they hadn't had a week off since week 5. Bring some more players back. It sounds like David Montgomery might even be ready for them. In the NFC, I did have a 2-horse race. I think the NFC, the Lions will be hosting most likely the Eagles, and I got the Lions prevailing there. In the AFC, 3-horse race. I know everyone's picking how and when the Chiefs will lose. Everyone's assuming the Ravens will travel to Buffalo. Buffalo will prevail. In comes Buffalo to Kansas City. I'm going to take it a step further on. I'm going to use the Kansas City trip last year in my thought process here. Kansas City hosts round 1. They then go to Buffalo, short underdogs, and win in Buffalo. Then come into Baltimore, short underdogs, and win there to get to the Super Bowl, and then eventually win the Super Bowl. I like the Ravens to win this week. I like the Ravens to go to Buffalo and upset the Bills. And yes, I will say it here on the 9th at 5:54. I like the Ravens to go to Kansas City and return the favor and face the Detroit Lions in the Super Bowl.
Okay. lot to think about them. I think it's between Detroit and Philly. At some point, both of them came back to the pack. But what I've seen out of Detroit's pass defense the last few weeks, they have Super Bowl qualifications now. And Philly has had those qualifications for a long, long time. I can't make the case that most of the other NFC teams, though they're capable of 1 upset, I don't think they're capable of 3 upsets to get there. So I think it's still at any point, Detroit could lose or that Philly could lose. But common sense tells me it's hard for these other teams to stack wins. So I'm going to go with the chalk there. Last year at this time, I was sitting with a +5 and a 5-1 and a 5.25 to 1 ticket on Kansas City because of what unbelievably happened with rest. Week 18, it got to reset and so on. This year, almost everybody got a rest in week 18. Baltimore didn't get the rest, but Buffalo played Josh Allen for 1 snap. And other teams Houston played Stroud for a quarter. The Rams put everybody in street clothes. So we had a lot of people not play week 18, including Kansas City. But Kansas City's benefit this year is that A, I think they're a better team than last year. B, they're much better at wide receiver now than they were at the start of this year and even a month ago. They got Brown finally playing. They got Hopkins in the full, now he's full ready to go after they got him midseason. This is a team that I've upgraded my power rating because the roster got better. Now they've had 23, 24 days off. I also think Baltimore is the best team, and Baltimore should have won the game last year, but they forgot that they should run the ball. And now they have Henry. Maybe it's Derrick Henry that I'm thinking of that can close the deal. He's the closer, like Barkley is hopefully the closer in Philadelphia. So they have some extra weapons. The one worry I have about Baltimore, not so much about Buffalo, because I agree with you. The worry is that playing Pittsburgh is such a physical chess match game. How are they going to come out of the Pittsburgh game? I don't like it when Harbaugh plays Tomlin or Tomlin plays Harbaugh, because I like it because I could fade them the next week because they put so much into that game. But now you're in playoff mode, and I don't think Baltimore wants to get in too many physical games, whereas Kansas City only gets one opponent. So that's why, even though I think on level playing field, I was hoping Kansas City would not be the number 1 seed, because I said this out loud 6 weeks ago. I wanted so badly to fade Kansas City this year, and then everything fell into place. And so I think Kansas City is a deserved favorite, and it may come down to how much wear and tear. We've already seen Zay Flowers not playing this week. How much wear and tear does Buffalo have before that possible matchup? That's the one that scares me.
A great call there on Zay Flowers, already been ruled out there. I didn't brush over it. Shame on me. Sunday night, Minnesota traveled to the Lions, and I had put Sam Darnold on this pedestal because Kevin O'Connell fixed something that no one else could have, and that was his back foot. He finally got him to keep the back foot down, and we saw 14-2 short underdogs go into Detroit. And what happened? All his throws early were high and sailing, and it brings me back to my coaching baseball days. The shortstop and third baseman throwing off of their back foot and then throwing it to the right or the left of the first baseman. That's what Sam Darnold did. And now they travel to, which was going to be LA. I think they're moving it to Arizona on Monday night. They opened up 2-point favorites. I'm seeing a pick 'em now. Why? Because people remember what they saw last. Rams can put pressure on Sam Darnold. What were your thoughts on this Minnesota Ram game?
Yeah, so that one has some interesting parallels to when they played. You can actually look at some of that. That was the game that Puka Nacua came back and just immediately caught on fire. So that caught Minnesota off guard. But Minnesota had just played Detroit, and now they were going on the road on a Thursday, short week. What do we have now? Minnesota just played Detroit in a winner-take-all #1 seed. And now in a slightly shorter time span, they played the Sunday night game, not really, but they have to travel to LA again. So a little bit of advantage Rams if they are playing in LA. I hadn't heard of any venue change because that's a different story. If it stays in LA just being there this past week, and my good friend Ted Sobel got all these interviews in the locker room. We played them about an hour ago on our Inside Blitz show with Chris and with Ted. And you can hear the enthusiasm and confidence from all the Rams and McVay that he interviewed in terms of the 5-game winning streak before the Subs played against Seattle. So they have a confident feeling. I think Minnesota in this game, regardless, I would be shocked if Justin Jefferson wasn't targeted at least 10 times. I would be shocked if they didn't try to go win with their best player. I think win or lose, Sam Darnold, back foot or not back foot, like I said in my original draft report on him about 7 years ago or whatever it was, you have to trust him in this game because you have to do a certain amount of scoring in this game. You cannot settle for field goals in the red zone. Maybe you can if your defense and Flores can frustrate Stafford. We haven't talked about Stafford. He could throw an interception or two. But basically, if I'm Minnesota, if I'm in that locker room, I say, Rams, try to stop Justin Jefferson because we don't think you can.
I have mixed emotions. I'm seeing Monday night there. There were some reports because of the fires. If they had to move it to Arizona, that's where they would go. I don't know where that's going to be played. Obviously, we'll keep our eyes on that. I've had to work in a little overtime. Apologies to the wife. Make sure you say I'm sorry. Ron's closing thoughts.
Well, and we covered so much. I don't even know that I have all that many closing thoughts. I think other than the exciting games this weekend, I will be commenting maybe not as they happen, but once the dust settles, maybe between the NFC and AFC championship games and the Super Bowl week when there's a little bit more quiet, there'll be some coaches hired, there'll be some GMs hired, and there'll be some paths woven based on those hires. I can't tell you enough, Jeff, how important it is that these guys get the right GMs and the right coaches and that they're in sync with one another. It's so important to get that right. Then you have the combine in 6 weeks or something like that. You have to get the draft right. The one thing I've harped upon, and it's changed the last few years, And it's caused me to bet a couple of overs in season wins, and it's been successful. But there is a correlation between drafting well and success in the NFL right away. I always thought there'd be a very low correlation because you draft and develop. But there's actually been a moderate correlation between if you kill the draft like the Chargers did, you get well right away. If you fail in the draft miserably like Jacksonville did and like the Raiders do, you fall flat. It's just the way the draft works. So get the coach right, get the GM right, get the draft right. It's even more than just the free agency parts. That's probably my biggest focus other than watching these games and enjoying these games.
Well, I can't wait for the next few weeks, and obviously during the quote unquote off season, as we do the recaps, we talk about the draft. It's going to be real interesting. Last year, the first four picks were all quarterbacks, as Caleb, Jaden Daniels, Drake May, and in comes JJ McCarthy. And then, of course, the Falcons and the Broncos say, hold my beer. And there was Bo Nix and Michael Penix Jr. in the top 10. Be interesting to see who number 3 and 4 is, because there's going to be two names flying up the board for the Titans of the world, the Giants of the world, the Raiders of the world. So it will be interesting there, of course. Ron, the scroller's been going the whole time. Everyone knows where to find you on X at Ron A Sports. But as we always close up here, tell them where they can find your written work and anything else, obviously your podcast schedule.
Well, the podcast schedule is pretty regular right now. We'll do the Tuesday, Chris and I, and the Inside Blitz on Thursday, plus, of course, be with you next week. No more articles are being planned right now. Some of the draft stuff I'll be doing may not go public, but every once in a while, I'm still writing, even if it's for myself. Every once in a while, I might make that available, but mainly I'll continue to have some thoughts on the Twitter X platforms and enjoy doing spots and other guest spots that might come up as we head toward the draft, because that's the second season. Everybody else will be on the college basketball, hockey, and everything else. And I'll be reading books and looking at the draft.
Well, we can't thank you enough, and thank everyone watching and listening. Shout out to Mr. Russell Saylor, as always. Want to thank everyone here. I want you to go enjoy the football game tonight at 7:30. Currently, as we speak, it is now down to a pick. It is now Penn State -1 at the Superbook and at Caesars and at the Heritage.
Wow.
I'm looking at 45s, a 46 at Bet Online, 45 at Caesars, 45.5 at the Circa. It's everywhere. So shop around, guys. That is imperative. If you like, for instance, Notre Dame today, go find where you can get a +1. If you like Penn State, go get a pick 'em. And when it comes to the under-over, God bless you, go shop around. From myself, Jeff Dawson at EC Sports Investor, one and only, Mr. Ron Marmalewski at Ron A Sports, we wish everyone a blessed evening. Have some fun, and we will see you in the morning.